That was the one we were.
Easier that way, right?
Remember Robert talked about it? Someone else bought it before we could buy it.
Oh,
And you can tell.
Remember we were thinking about buying it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Who owned that?
Boggs.
Okay.
Yeah, well, in fact,
I don't know. I don't think we have that.
Boggs is the agent. Oh, it's not here, but his dad owned it because I met him.
Here it is, Tom Ball.
They must
Yeah,
be out of town.
I met Tom Boggs Sr. about 3 or 4 times.
I was surprised.
Many Jeff Pritchard wouldn't do nothing.
Who bought it?
We don't know. We don't know who bought it. But they're going to build.
So we didn't think we
Industrial park because it's industrial.
It's in the city limits.
Yeah.
Yeah, so, here, as long as they do something with it.
Huh?
That's as long as they do something.
Yeah. I think they're going to do something.
Good, that's fine.
You would think if you're going to buy for that kind of price. I don't know if that's what
Well,
they
it's got a
got.
lot of things on the agenda today.
400,000.
Yeah.
No,
Sure they do.
480.
A lot of things on the
Yeah.
agenda today.
Yeah. If you're going to spend that kind of money, you're going to do something.
Hey, Carrie. Did that short note to you last night? Did that make sense? Okay.
Did you understand, or am I wrong, that this C1 zone that we rezoned,
Is this for the, over here, the golf course?
Okay.
when we made the C1 zone,
Oh, yeah, I remember that. Okay, yeah.
we did, wasn't it stated in the paper or someplace, I thought it was, if one of those
Family, do any music?
sells it,
Singers?
How you doing?
they would sell it, have somebody else move in, so residents.
That's a good question.
I think they were
Well,
forced
I always do
to
a little
sell.
caroling at Anthony this Saturday.
They could never go back residential.
What I thought, Charlotte said,
I decided I'm gonna do 8 o'clock.
You know, I don't know. That's a good question.
People to get, if I can do the afternoon, because there's a lot more people. So, traffic.
and also,
And everybody,
talking about here,
you know, are repelled by it. But you didn't find it.
when they tap into the water, it's here.
Look,
Yeah.
kids will drag their parents over.
Is that the one going?
Yeah, but there's a lot of that. Supposed to be at every
It
single.
is actually pretty nice.
So how would they interfere with the city street? They're saying that the people would have to repair any damage they do to the street when they tap in.
Yeah, you would think it would be it'd be at the edge of the.
It should be inside.
Yeah.
It should be.
Maybe they mean like the edge or something.
Christian,
That lateral should be.
We good?
Kind of really
you're telling
a couple
me that
feet
they're
past that
not?
street. Yeah, you're right. So you wouldn't interfere with anything.
yeah,
And they,
I haven't seen that.
Yeah.
top single.
That's a good question.
I hear it.
That's it.
And Charlotte, pull it close when you're talking. Pull it toward you.
Oh, here's the rates right here. Is this going to be the 2 cents below? Oh, it says 2 cents below. It says 2 cents below the SCO.
They changed it then.
Or you can do a 12-month fix.
No, that's right. So what? You think I'm gonna change for 2 cents?
Yeah, you're right.
Can you do a first reading?
Not a chance.
Or not?
And the standard price is 4.
Okay. I call the Norton City Council regular council meeting for Monday, December 9th, 2019 to order. Please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance and a moment of silent reflection. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Be seated, please. Would the clerk call the roll?
Mr. Gaynor?
Here.
Mr. McClone?
Here.
Mr. Carratt?
Here.
Mr. Towsley?
Here.
Ms. Whipke? Mr. Pelot?
Here.
Mr. Kernan?
Here. Communications from the public. Nicole Harris-Sweet.
Hi. Good evening, everyone. Good evening. Council President. Good evening, Mayor. Congratulations on your new term.
Thank you.
My name is Nicole Harris-Sweet, and I'm a relationship manager with Northeast Ohio Public Energy Council. I've been with NOPEC a little over 4.5 years, so I'll be approaching 5 years in April, and I'm happy to serve as your relationship manager for Summit County, in which City of Norton falls in. The reason for my presentation this evening, and I will not be long, is this is really our first opportunity since you've become an official member with NOPEC to address you and just say welcome. I know when we did the initial mailing, enrollment mailing, there was a little bit of a wrinkle there, and I scurried here as fast as I could to meet with Mr. Fowler and in his office, and we were able to provide you with some content for your website, all of your communications with the public and with the customers, residents, small businesses that would be enrolling in our aggregation. Shortly thereafter, another letter went out because when the City of Norton joined NOPEC, we were right on the cusp of our anniversary mailer. So by PUCO regulation, we have to do an anniversary mailer every 2 years for gas, every 3 years for electric. You all joined us. Your initial letters went out in September, and we knew we had an anniversary mailer coming up in November. So we apologize for the overlap. We cannot circumvent what the regulation or with the law that governs governmental aggregation, what it requires us to do. So I just want to just kind of back up just a little bit. I won't bore you with the details about NOPEC, but as you know, we are a governmental opt-out aggregator. We are a supplier of natural gas and electric in the state of Ohio. We are the largest aggregator, nonprofit aggregator in the state, and really the largest in the country. We have over 500,000 electric accounts and over 400,000 gas accounts. Now, in your packet, what I provided in the back, if you want to pull it out, is a list of communities. So I think it's just really good to see from a credibility standpoint who we are, the communities that we serve, and who your neighbors and who your partners are in the aggregation with us. City of Norton is not on here yet. It's in the back, on the left side in the back. But we will update this by December 31st because we had a number of new communities that joined us this year along with the City of Norton. So if you just kind of take a look, you'll see who our natural gas and electric communities are. But we also have communities that are very similar to you. They may be with us just for gas. And then we have communities that are just with us for electric. Some additional information in your packet is a pocket guide and FAQs. These are also available for your constituents, for our customers, small businesses. I've left some here. I'm happy to bring as many as you like. Anything that you need from NOPEC is at no cost to you as a member community. This other postcard is a refrigerator magnet that you can hand out to your constituents or to our customers and small businesses. It just kind of goes on their refrigerator or anything, any place they want to hang it with our 800 number. NOPEC's customer service number is 24 hours, 7 days a week. Okay, so if you are a night owl and you're up at 3 a.m. in the morning and you decide that you want to call and enroll in a different product that we have to offer, somebody will answer. Okay, so it's just 855-NOPEC-01. Some other things I just wanted to share with you I think is really important for you to know is really about kind of how our pricing works. So I think I heard over the microphone a couple council people talking about our 2 cents off. SEO, I heard that kind of come through the microphone. So we have a number of products under our gas program. Again, I just want to remind you that your initial enrollment happened in September. So on that letter, there was a price for 3 terms. It was our introductory offer program price for the city of Norton. When you are a new community coming into the aggregation, we have to go out and buy that load. So the pricing in your initial offer will be a little different than what the entire aggregation may be served at. So every 2 months, we send out what's called refresh letters throughout our entire aggregation. So when someone comes off of a contract or they want to join the aggregation or their account becomes eligible, that initial opt-out notice that they receive will have an introductory rate. After 3 months, their program becomes kind of synthesized into the entire aggregation. So it's a little confusing, but your first letter had a price, I think, of like $3.63. Your customers needed to, or your residents needed to decide by, I had the date here, October 8th, if they wanted to stay in the aggregation or opt out. There's no cost, no penalty for opting out. Then we rolled out the anniversary mailer, which had a different price. Because when we do anniversary, we are recertifying as an aggregator with the PUCO. So the pricing in January is a little different than what your introductory price is. So in your packet, I provided straight from our website, that's a screenshot from our website, what our new pricing is. So if you take a look, it says natural gas. It shows what our program price is, our monthly variable rate, 12-month and 24-month fixed term. So this year, we introduced fixed rates for our gas program. Before, we had our program price, and then our variable price is our legacy product. Gas was actually the only product that we had when we became an NOPEC back in 2000. We were gas only. And it's 2 cents off of standard choice. And I attached to our pricing page, I attached the choice page for gas so that you could see what standard choice is right now. I think it's important just to kind of understand, what choices your customers have, what your residents have. And if you take a look, I highlighted it, and it tells you what Dominion's standard choice offer is from November 12th through December 11th. Standard choice is $2.81. Our monthly variable is going to always be 2 cents off of standard choice. So that's how our variable product works. Okay, I think everyone understands how a fixed product works, so I won't labor on that. And as you can see, standard choice is refreshed every 30 days. So the current price for standard choice is from November 12th through December 11th. So whatever standard choice is, our variable is going to always be 2 cents off of that. And the other great thing about the aggregation is that for small business, if you look in the other highlighted below, small commercial businesses cannot choose the standard choice offer. They used to be able to, but I think sometime around 2013, Dominion kind of changed that rule. But under the aggregation, a small business in the city of Norton or throughout our entire aggregation can enroll in our variable product and receive the 2 cents off standard choice.
Okay.
So I think that's a great opportunity for them. I live in the city of Solon. I've been on the variable product for 3 years, and it's been performing well. So you can toggle back and forth between the program price or the variable or enroll in a fixed product. There's no charge to go between products. So
Just to let you know, the standard choice is going to be $2.69 December 12th.
okay.
It was in the paper the other day.
Okay, great.
Yeah.
So then our price will be 2 cents off of that.
Yeah.
Excellent. Thank you, Councilman. So I just wanted to just kind of share with you a little bit about our pricing programs. My card is in there if anyone has questions. The last detail I just want to go through with you is that when you enrolled in our aggregation, we had a mailing list of about 2,276 eligible accounts. So we mailed out that number of letters. To date, you have about 1,300 residential accounts enrolled with us and 50 small businesses. So that number that I received from our IT data analyst is 1,326 residential accounts and 70 commercial accounts. as of November. So we may have scared, some people just initially not knowing who we are. The second letter that went out for the anniversary, we made sure that the city logo, the city seal was on that, to let the community know that you were partnering with us. We just went through a big anniversary mailer. We may pick up some more accounts through that. But whatever education, information you need, just to help people to become more knowledgeable about who we are and who their choices are, please let us know. Robert is in constant contact with me, and we can get you anything that you need. The last item in your folder just really talks more about our membership benefits. One thing that Mr. Messner and I just worked on was for our preferred pricing. If you look at our brochure, it says NOPEC is the safe choice. If you look on the right side near the bottom, it says NOPEC Preferred Pricing Program. So this is something that we rolled out where our communities can enroll their municipal load in a very low fixed rate directly with our supplier. So these are wholesale rates. They're not retail rates. There's no termination fees, and we were able to just enroll the city's gas accounts in them. And we're going to take a look at a couple more to see if there's some additional savings that we can offer. But there's a lot of choices. We have low interest loans for maybe some of your small businesses in the city of Norton if they want to do energy efficiency upgrades. We have lending utensils for them to do that. We do a lot of community outreach. If you have a strong senior presence or population, we will come out and do those events to help all your residents be more knowledgeable and help them to protect themselves from other, for-profit companies out there that may be calling them or knocking on their door. We have a do not knock program, so we have a lot of membership benefits that you can take, that you can avail your community to. As far as your sponsorship dollars, I was able to confirm that today. So the mayor and Mr. Fowler and Mr. Messner, we send information about our grants and sponsorships directly to you all by email. So that sponsorship for 2020 will be $750 to use for any event that the city is sponsoring. It can come directly to the city, or if you're partnering with a nonprofit or a vendor, 4th of July, Halloween, pancakes with the police, whatever it is you want to use the dollars for. And your grant dollars will be calculated after we get your final enrollment numbers at the end of December. Other than that, there's a lot more I could talk about, but if you have questions, I'm happy to answer.
Does everyone when you first send out the letters, they all begin in the standard program price?
They do.
And so if they don't like that price, then they need to call you to change it?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
And I do see if, let's say you leave the program and go somewhere else, and then can you come back in?
Yes, it's very difficult. It's a long, arduous process. So if you go under contract with another supplier, you would need to terminate
Right them, and then you would let us back in.
Yeah, you're always welcome to come back
Always
in.
welcome back, okay.
Yes. What will need to happen is our mailing list for our eligibility, those accounts that are eligible, actually come from Dominion. So once those accounts fall back to Dominion, they'll fall back on their standard service offer. It's very much like the SCO, but it's a 2-month billing place, and it's in that description on the gas choice. But once they're there and become an eligible account by the utilities definition, the account is placed on a mailing list that's visible to us. So then we send an opt-out notice.
Okay.
We are, and this was something that was brought up at our General Assembly, we are trying to establish an opt-in for gas so that customers can call and opt in. You can do that for electric, but not for gas, because Dominion Utility has it set up where you have to make a choice. So you can't just call and enroll in the aggregation.
And I do see in all your programs, you can switch into any of those programs anytime you want.
Anytime you want.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Anything else? Thank you.
Thank you. Sorry to be so lengthy. Have a good night, everyone.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Rob Kitchen. When you approach, if you'll just give your name and address, and then you'll have 5 minutes.
Rob Kitchen, 4968 Grove Avenue in Norton. Just here backing up my neighbors on this, wanting to build a convenience store over on our side of Wooster Road. And just here for my opposition of it, I guess. All of us are. For numerous reasons. Okay? All right.
All right, thank you.
Thank you. All right, thanks.
Mr. Kitchen? Just, there will be a public hearing,
Yes.
correct?
Yeah.
And I think it would be wise of you and your neighbors to come to the public hearing, because not that we're not listening to you now, but we will, on the record, be more carefully tracking what the residents say. Okay. Do we have a date for that, Carrie?
January 13th.
So, okay, great. Thank you.
Thank you. Yep. Mr. and Mrs. Alan Ryder. Just give your name and address, and you'll have 5 minutes.
Linda and Alan Ryder, 5002 Worcester Road West. We're the property owners right next to the adjacent property that they're trying to rezone, and we were just here again to speak and hear what was being said about it. I was unaware of a public meeting for January 13th, so we will all definitely be back then. But as we said, we're here to oppose it. So.
All right.
Okay.
Thank you. Thank you. All right, Committee of the Whole. Letter A, Planning Commission Resolution Number 11, 2019. Mr. Gaynor.
This was what we were just discussing, right?
Yes.
Yes.
And you are going to have a public hearing on January 13th, so that'll take care of that for tonight. Nothing further on that.
Okay. Letter B, amend appropriations. Ms. Whipke?
Thank you, Mr. President. Well, we've come to the end of the year, and we need to make a couple changes to our appropriations and transfers in order to catch up to be ready for the beginning of the year. And that would be for we're appropriating for Fund 0010501544490. That's for a JED payment to Barberton. We'd gotten behind on this somehow. We're making up the differences now, and we're going to go from $475,000 to $515,000 before the end of the year. And then the other appropriation was a miscellaneous transfer for our service department and debt service expenses to do with the service. That was a miscellaneous transfer from, that's going to go from $2,182,000 to $2,314,000. So those transfers will come from Fund 001 to go to 102, blah, blah, blah. Service Department, we're transferring $100,000. And then we're going to get the other transfers from Fund 771 to 771 for the debt service for $32,000. And that'll get us all caught up. And we need to get that on tonight and waive the second and third readings. And this does have emergency language.
Right.
Is that your motion?
Anybody have any questions? This time I motion to add ordinance 135, 2019 to tonight's agenda.
I'll second.
Motion and second to add 135, 2019 for its first reading tonight. Would the clerk call the roll, please?
Ms. Whipke?
Yes.
Mr. Pilat?
Yes.
Mr. Gaynor?
Yes.
Mr. McClone?
Yes.
Mr. Carratt?
Yes.
Mr. Towsley?
Yes.
Mr. Kernan?
Yes. Letter C, Cleveland Maslin Road, North Water and Sewer Tap-In Ordinance. That would be Mr. Pilat.
Thank you, Mr. President. This is covering Cleveland Maslin Road north of 261. And administration's asked us to put this on tonight's agenda and waive the second and third. However, I think there's still a lot of questions. A lot of people were just seeing the actual construction cost figures. I talked to Mr. Markey before the meeting. Mr. Fowler, are you okay with if we leave this over till next year to discuss a little more?
Well, I think council needs to decide and give us direction whether or not you pass the ordinance, but putting it off another 2 months when I have a church that's under findings and orders that needs the water connection and they need to know the amount they need to pay.
Okay.
So I don't know that it necessarily needs adopted, but we need direction as to which way we're going.
Right.
I guess, Scott, what's your concern?
Just how the 71.15% versus the 28.85%, how'd that come about?
That was the cost of the project. So the water portion, the water line was more expensive because it was cast iron line, 16-inch from the school to the intersection at 261. So that was a significantly higher cost. Once we got to the other side, it was smaller pipe, and that wasn't nearly as large. The proportionate, the 7128 came down to how the total cost of the project, based on linear footage and the cost to install the water line versus the sewer line. So each manhole was itemized, each lateral was itemized. And that's how we came up with the 7128 split, or I think what 78. Yeah.
And currently, right now, we've got Dollar General, the church, and 2 other businesses that are looking to hook up right away.
And the tap.
Correct.
Okay.
The church is probably the most urgent.
Okay.
Because they're under findings and orders from EPA.
Right.
And they have a plumber ready to connect. The other ones can hold off. Dollar General, we set at 35,000. That's 2.5 ERUs. Okay. They just need an invoice. But again, once we get direction, we'd be able to tell people what that number is.
Now, this was a petitioned project, correct?
Correct.
All right.
But the reason we came up with a tap-in fee is because the person that would be assigned that cost should get a credit for all the other people connecting. I don't know that it's fair to the property owner to pay for everybody else's connection. Mm-hmm. But we do have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I think 5 water connections already. And 2 sewer.
All right.
And then how is that broke up? I mean, how many houses are involved or businesses, and like the tavern, the church, and Rick's Auto Body? So those are all just one benefit?
ERU.
ERU?
Yeah, the church would be one ERU because of the lack of usage, and it's based on the 400 number. And we calculated. Did they get the spreadsheet with the calculation? Mm-hmm. Okay.
Yeah.
That was the engineer that was supervising the project who calculated those flows.
Prepared.
It wasn't like
yes.
it was Robert and I who calculated those flows.
This is not go ahead.
No, go ahead.
This is not a situation like we've had in the past for being able to put it on taxes, correct?
I think that's a council decision. It would be my recommendation we consider something like that, whether it's a 5-year payback, whether it's you pay the first year when you sign up, and then we assess 4 years to get our 5 years. That's a pretty large number. If someone's going to hook to water and sewer, I believe it's in the neighborhood of 25,000, maybe 27,000.
27 plus.
And that's why I'm one that we should encourage or help people that want it, because that water situation up there, we actually have a lady on the corner that we can't get water to on Reimer and Cleveland Maslin. But that's a pretty steep number for them. I would ask council to consider letting us do maybe a case-by-case basis, or just specifically say residential. Mm-hmm. That you could do over 5 years.
I mean, I would be inclined to do that with residential, because most, like Dollar General is just going to send us a check, Yeah, I don't know about the other businesses because they're local businesses, but they should be able to absorb it, I would think, a little easier than a resident would.
And I would be open to a case-by-case basis, someone saying, hey, we have a financial need.
Well, and these numbers are no surprise to these folks. I mean, they've known that they were going to get these tap-in fees, and they still wanted the project, correct?
Well, the ones that are asking for it,
Right.
no. Okay, we gave them ballparks. We had
Gotcha.
estimates.
Okay.
There was a large change order of about $30,000 because there was when you're working underground, they're unknowns, and we ran into about three to four storm sewer pipes that we were unaware. One was very large, and it was right in the middle of where the 16-inch line was to go. So they had to cut the 16-inch line and then put a bunch of elbows and things to go around it. But considering the cost, it wasn't egregious. But those are things when you're doing underground work that happen. So we factored the change order, all the engineering costs, everything that we spent money on this project towards was proportionately set out, and that's where we came up with this number.
It seems to me, didn't we go like 20 years for the assessments for the other sewers and stuff along Nash Heights?
Up in Nash Heights.
And everywhere else?
Yeah. Well, and I think that one, I think it was 30. I didn't mean to interrupt you. I'm sorry, Ms. Whipke. That was about 30 years, but the loan term was 30 years on that as well. I'm open-minded. I didn't want to come here and say, council, I would like this. It's really your decision. That's why I said I just need direction so I can tell folks what direction we're going. I know the church is concerned about the financial ramifications, but they have to have the water.
Mm-hmm. Well, I cannot see going to a resident and tell them you have 5 years to pay this off, particularly when they weren't the ones that had initiated, for the most part, the project to begin with. So I would never want to put them under the 8 ball as far as paying it all up front, or I think 5 years is probably out of sight for some of them as well. So I would be strongly in favor of having extended payments on them for their assessments. And I'm just going to keep on rolling with this while I've got it in my lap. I was kind of, thank you, kind of confused over this, and I think it's number 4, section 4, they're talking about that the property owners would be responsible for repairs to the road damages. We're putting in laterals, are we not?
Laterals are
I don't
in.
remember ever seeing that.
That's just standard language in case there would be damage to the roads. There are laterals to every property line.
Right.
So it shouldn't be an issue, but I think that's just standard language that the
Yeah,
water.
it's already in our codified ordinances. They have to pull a right-of-way permit to do the tap into the lateral. So if they damage, they have to restore. That's standard.
But
language
wouldn't
from
that
the city.
actually be on whoever was doing the construction work for the property owner?
Well, theoretically, yes. Yeah, the contractor.
Yes, I just don't recall seeing that in the other ordinances for assessments.
Yeah,
but-
it was definitely in the Cleveland-Massillon, the Phase 1 Cleveland-Massillon, because that's the ordinance I used as a basis for this one. So that language is definitely in there.
I'd like to suggest that for the residential parcels, that they be given the choice to pay it off up front or to put it on their taxes for this, whatever it was we gave Nash Heights. I think it was a maximum of 30 years. So I would suggest that we give them the same opportunity that Nash Heights had, time-wise and everything. But I would also suggest that we move ahead expeditiously due to the church and other things.
I got a question regarding that. Who's paying this money up front? So if we put this on the taxes for 30 years, is it the city that's out the money? Or
Yeah, the city's out.
City's
Yeah.
already paid the
Right.
money from the water and sewer fund, so the city has fronted the money from our 128 fund, and then the 126 water fund has paid these costs up front. So it's just really the city getting reimbursed for the expenses you've put in up front.
And they would be, if that was set up that way, they would be paying a a small interest rate on it, I believe, is the way we set it up for
Yes.
Nash Heights. So the interest rate that they would be paying, I'm hoping would pay back the city what they have invested in it. And the business people who are wanting hooked up, I remember them coming and wanting this service, and I don't think they have a problem with it, with reimbursing the amount. And if I don't even have a problem with the businesses. If it's a small business, I don't have a problem with them putting it on their taxes if they own the property. If they don't own the property, it's not a possibility. So some of those businesses are leasees and they don't own that property, so they're not going to be able to put it on their taxes. And if they want to hook up to it, they're going to have to hook up to it and pay for it the way I understand it. But residences, absolutely. I can't.
Part of the thing we thought, I mean, not that I think anyone's against the idea of fronting the money and then paying it, collecting over time. No one's being mandated to connect.
Right.
If there was a mandated connection,
Right.
I'm sure we would all feel very sympathetic and come up with an
Right.
exception for that property. But no one here is being mandated. So if they want to connect, right, so I think we want to encourage connections.
Mm-hmm.
I think 30 years is an awful long time. Right? I don't have a problem, it's not my decision, but I wouldn't have a problem advocating for the concept of being able to spread costs over time, but 30 years seems like an awful long time for a non-mandated connection.
That could be discussed time-wise, but it's awful. Like myself, if water came to my house right now, there's no way or in sewer, there's no way I could pop up 25,000 grand. But if I had an opportunity to put it on my taxes for 20 years, I'd do it in a heartbeat. I mean, it's going to increase the value of my property.
Just to remind council, the sewer for phase one that you established, that was for 20 years.
Yes, it was.
Okay.
What was the assessment on that? I was trying to find that.
It was like 29,000?
29,000, if I remember right, was the amount for
I'd have to-
Cleveland Maslin Road to businesses, and
But they had sidewalks and the whole 9 yards.
that's right.
Yeah.
In that.
I don't remember allowing assessments on that project. I thought that was
It was, and I think council established that 60-40 split. That's where I don't want to quote that number, please. We set forth, I believe, if I recall, you all said at that meeting if people were mandated to connect, they were going to pick up, and I think it was.
Yeah, I think that was pretty close to
Yeah,
it.
so in my mind, the difference here is between it being a mandated project and not being a mandated project. Where it's mandated, that they have to connect, I'm certainly a lot more sympathetic if they have to connect, that we should do something. And I don't even have a problem with residents and non-mandated that we allow some type of payment plan on the
We
taxes
do
over
want to
20
encourage
years.
connections.
However, right, we want connections and businesses. I mean, I'm not as sympathetic, you know.
Right. I could see the residents giving them like between 10 and 15 years to pay it back. Businesses, I think it's due upon when you file to pull the tap-in permit.
But
Now-
but if you're asking where you think council or where we think council is, I mean, my own personal opinion is I'm fine with these tap-in fees. I'm okay with that because it is what it is,
these
especially
tap-in-
for the businesses.
These tap-in fees cover the cost of the project? If
100%.
If you had 100%?
100%.
Involvement?
100%.
Now, with the water, it shows that the ERUs is 35.
Yep.
And it shows that the sewer is 15. I guess I'm confused there. If the businesses, there's only one that I see that is more than one benefit for the water.
So remember, the water line starts at the bridge
Okay.
and goes up to Reimer. The sewer line starts at 261 and goes that way. That's why there's a difference in the ERUs. And that's why the disproportionate project costs, because you're talking significantly more distance with the water line. The ERU figure was based on usage, estimated usage of the users on that would be connecting.
Right.
All the potential users.
Based on 400 gallons, I think, per
Correct.
day, waste discharge.
Well, both water and sewer. They're
Yeah,
both the same.
right.
In and out is the same.
So I guess how many residential homes are we actually talking about? And are they listed anywhere? How do we keep track of this?
I will get you a list, I believe. So your dense, I call it dense, it's not really dense. Your most dense residential is from the corner of 261 to the end, the terminus of the line. I believe there's 6 there. On the south side of the line, it's all businesses. There's a parsonage behind the church, and I believe there's 1 residence to the east, would be the east of Cleveland Massillon at the bridge, who does not have an interest in connecting. But I will confirm those numbers.
I believe we were given the numbers, weren't we? And maybe I'm missing it here. There should have been 13 residences, residential, in that paper that we got. I'd have to find it here, but I'm pretty sure we have those numbers.
Right, I show 13 residential and
Okay.
There you go.
Right, you have it there.
13 residential for water, but then it says commercial 22, and I'm trying to figure out where the 22 is coming from.
Nine of them are, I think that's the 13 and the 9 combined, I'm pretty sure. If you look out to the right, you see 9.
No, I'm looking down on the water there.
I don't know, where am I at?
I'm looking.
I can't
The
find
9
it.
was the residential sewer. And I was just trying to figure out if the commercial side is 22, and we're only talking 5 businesses, and only 1 business is paying. I'm just confused on where that figure is coming from. Because it's showing a total ERU for the water at 35, 22 being business, 13 being residential.
Excuse me, Jack, it's not in your packet. That came in an email.
Okay, then it's, anyway, I know I seen those figures, and I don't think, nobody's against, I don't think anybody's against allowing 10 to 20 years or whatever the figure that the city comes up with, the council comes up with for residential. Yeah, that's I don't know why we would object to allowing all the residences to tap in. I think it's to our benefit to have them all tap in, even if we are tied up, even if our money's tied up for that 10 years or 15 years or whatever it is. I think that it's to the city's benefit to have as many tap-ins as possible, sewer and water out there. You don't want 2 or 3 people tapping in and their next door neighbor not having water, and same way with sewer. Yeah.
Right, and I'm not opposed to any of this, but I'm just trying to get clarification on what's driving the figures.
Well, I know that, and I apologize, I don't have that spreadsheet in front of me, but I'm pretty certain we counted Mead Place to have 6.
Well, I was going to say pass it down.
Yeah, right here.
Pass it down to
Yeah, right here it is.
I'm pretty certain that Mead Place was a 6 ERU, which is
All right, see, that one's not listed on here.
right. Well, I'm going by, well. So there are 9 residents on the sewer.
Mm-hmm.
Correct.
That's what I read.
And there are 13 on both. So that tells me there are 4 residential properties south of 261. There are 14 commercial users. You can't say that. 11 commercial users. 3 north of the 261 and 8 south of 261. So we based it on a 2 ERUs, assuming that those commercial users would get 2 based on estimated flow, Now, remember, we said 2.5 for Dollar General. That's where the 35,000 number originated. And we did round up. The one thing that's not factored in here, and it's one of the reasons I'm not opposed to kicking it to the next month, is we didn't do an escalator clause, which we have always included in most of our legislation as like a $500 incentive, so to speak, for 10 years. We kind of just wanted to get a feel for where council was. If the 14.5 and the 13.7 are good numbers, then we'll be able to tell people. I'm not able to tell them right now that that's the number until I have a pretty good understanding of what we're doing.
But it's all right. So you want to know that the number is something that's palatable for council.
Correct.
Then we can come back and we can talk about these other issues as far as 10 or 15 or 20 years for residential.
Correct.
What we're going to do as
Correct.
far as that's concerned.
Yeah. So even if council just says, okay, we'll add it to the next agenda for a first read.
Right.
I have good direction to say this is what council's moving forward, and then we're not rushing, and we have time to make a few edits.
And we have some time to discuss it and and come up with other possibilities.
And
for
I can tell
residents.
people that's always subject to change, right? But
But
as of now, this is as the legislation stands.
And we can always come down, we just have the, can't go up.
Oh, we can go up. It can go any direction.
After you make the.
Oh, it can go whatever direction council chooses.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, I'm fine with going forward with it for the businesses and stuff because, I mean, it was petition driven by them. So, I mean, in order to get the church tied in, things like that, I mean, I'm good with the figures and I'm okay with putting it on for the first read, but I'd like to just be able to talk about how we want to do the residential side and how long, what type of terms, and then I would actually like to see the parcels listed out so as we move forward, I mean, people understand that it affects these properties because what happens if somebody just beyond it taps in?
So I just have one question. So, okay, what if I'm a property owner and I change parcel numbers? It's my concern about putting parcel numbers in an ordinance. We have some ordinances that have parcel numbers that no longer exist, and we've run into situations where I would be okay with putting addresses in, like these are the current addresses between
X
X and.
for a list, right? You just want to know. You want a map. Here are the residential. Here are the commercial. Show me the part.
Okay.
Not to put it in the ordinance, just as a reference point.
Okay.
That's what he's saying.
You know, we just need some traceability down the road. I mean, 10 years from now, when the only person left is Mr. Fowler or
We
Mr.
discussed,
Markey.
we discussed that problem once before, and it was suggested that there be a computer program set up to track these payments and people owes this and that, whatever. And I think that's probably being worked on. I also would suggest that the church be given an opportunity to if there, is it 2.5 for them, you said? I forget.
No, that 2.5 is Dollar General.
Okay, so
think
it's
the
only
church was
one.
just one
I
benefit.
think the
So
church.
I think they should be treated as a residence as far as the ability to pay over a period of time. Just because of the fact that they are a church and they are nonprofit and it's just a situation where you have so many people together and they would all have to chip in X number of dollars and take up a collection and sell cakes and cookies. And why don't we just put it on the tax duplicate? Residents and churches, I'm all for it. And the amounts, I don't see a problem with the amounts if that's the total amount that it cost us to put that in.
Rest of council, anybody else want to buy in?
I'm okay with this being a starting point, but that's as far as I'm okay tonight.
I would agree with that.
I'm in agreement too.
All right. That being said, then I will move to add this to council's next agenda at the beginning of the year.
Second.
This is the last.
Yeah. Yeah, this is the last
Council
council
at
meeting
the
for this
beginning of
year.
the year.
Oh, at the beginning.
So next, yeah.
Motion and second.
Clerk, call the roll.
Oh, I'm sorry. I missed the second.
Jack.
Jack.
Mr. Pelot?
Yes.
Mr. Gaynor?
Yes.
Mr. McClone?
Yes.
Mr. Carrot?
Yes.
Mr. Towsley?
Yes.
Ms. Whipke?
Yes.
Mr. Kernan?
Yes. All right, at this time, I'd like to acknowledge receipt of the budget reports for November 2019. Consideration of minutes of the regular council meeting of November 25th, 2019. Are there any additions, deletions, or corrections to those minutes? Those then will be accepted as submitted. Reports from officers, boards, and commissions. Mayor Zita.
Thank you, Mr. President. I would just like to announce that this past weekend we had Christmas in the park this past Saturday. So after that, we have the trees all lit and the park is all lit up. Later that evening, then all the residents went up to the community center, and Women's Club helped participate in the program as well. Provided stuff to drink and stuff to eat. Santa then was also up there. In addition to that, I just want to thank the Norton Women's Club, and as I said that evening, it takes pretty much every resident and every business in the city that participated in putting trees up. And there was a lot of donations, a lot of time was done to help beautify the park, and I want to thank everybody for coming out and participating in that. Also that evening, OHM, which was our master plan engineers that we've hired on board to look at and put a master plan together for our parks. They were present at the event as well to begin taking a survey, and it's a survey that I think we've talked about. You can do a survey three different ways. You can do it paper, you can do it online, or you can do it with the whatever the little thing is on your phone. So there's a number of different ways. We just want everybody to know that the city is behind the program and asking that as many people that would possibly be able to participate would be great. It is the only way that this company will be able to acquire the information that the residents would like to see in our park system. So if we all work together, hopefully the outcome will be great. So that's all I have.
Mr. Mayor.
Yes.
Just for clarification, is that on the city's website now, the survey?
Yes, it is.
Okay. Thank you.
There is a link. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
There is a link on the city website for that. Yes.
Okay, great.
And there are little they're called QR codes. There should be some out in front for people to come and get when they come to the city hall as well.
Right at the bottom of the page, you can click on, and it just says take the survey, and survey's right there.
Okay, great. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Mr. Fowler.
I just have a few brief. I'm optimistic that the Eastern Road Auto Line construction will be complete this week. We only have about 300 more feet, and if the weather would cooperate, we would be complete with our construction. So we'll have another ordinance probably when you return for the Eastern Road taps. I should have final numbers by then. New Park Drive construction continues. If you haven't stopped out there, I highly encourage it. It really is making a difference to that area. It's a little bit cumbersome for travel for our businesses, but I believe it's really working out. The city now has a Twitter and Facebook page for city messaging. It's at City Norton for Twitter, and there's a City of Norton, Ohio Facebook page. I encourage everyone to promote that for us. We will use it only for us to promote different activities. We think it'll be a way for us to push out messaging such as road closures, construction details, things of that nature. It just went live last week. We hope to put our survey out as we get followers to encourage, get our ability or increase our ability to get that message out. One thing you may have read in a local newspaper, Medina Gazette, had an article about Wadsworth Township soliciting services. They came to us asking if we would be willing to contract for EMS coverage. We have encouraged them to continue their contract with Wadsworth, but just wanted you to be aware that is something they approached us, and the mayor and I did meet with them last week, about the same day the article came out. And then one last note, we did receive a notice from the Summit County Health Department. I would be glad to get to everyone. There are 3 areas that have discharge violations, high E. coli. One is on the northwest side of the city. It's very small, isolated, and the 2 other areas seem to be a little more elevated than others. We are working with the health department and trying to identify those sources of discharge, and we'll be optimistic that we can get those septic tanks replaced. And one is in the area, Mr. Towsley, of an email that we received recently. So I believe that to be the source, but the health department will have to confirm that. So I just wanted to bring you up to speed on those at this time.
Thank you, Mr. Messner.
Nothing at this time, thank you.
Mr. Markey.
Nothing this time, thank you.
All right. Introduction of new legislation, ordinance number 135, 2019. Ms. Whipke.
Thank you, Mr. President. This time I introduce ordinance 135, 2019 for its first reading. Ask clerk to read it, please.
An ordinance to amend the appropriations for the current expenses of the City of Norton for the fiscal year ending December 31st, 2019, authorizing transfers from the general fund for calendar year 2019 and declaring an emergency.
Again, this was what I talked about earlier about bringing our books in line before the end of the year. If there's no questions, I motion to waive the second and third readings on ordinance 135, 2019.
I'll second.
There's a motion and a second to waive the second and third readings. Is there any discussion regarding waiver? Will the clerk call the roll, please?
Ms. Whipke?
Yes.
Mr. Pelot?
Yes.
Mr. Gaynor?
Yes.
Mr. McClone?
Yes.
Mr. Carrot?
Yes.
Mr. Towsley?
Yes.
Mr. Kernan?
Yes.
This time I motion to adopt ordinance 135, 2019.
I'll second.
There's a motion and a second for adoption of 135, 2019. Is there any further discussion?
One question with the JED, does that payment get us caught up?
Yes, that was the $200,000 that we were paying to the city of Barberton for the Fred Martin, and this will make the last payment, so that is done.
That's what I thought.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
Any further discussion? Would the clerk call the roll, please?
Ms. Whipke?
Yes.
Mr. Pelot?
Yes.
Mr. Gaynor?
Yes.
Mr. McClone?
Yes.
Mr. Carrot?
Yes.
Mr. Towsley?
Yes.
Mr. Kernan?
Yes. We will be having ordinance number 136 will have its first reading on the next regular council agenda. So moving on to introduction of prior legislation. Ordinance number 128, 2019. Ms. Whipke.
Thank you, Mr. President. I offer ordinance 128, 2019 for its second reading. Ask clerk to read, please.
An ordinance to authorize the administrative officer to enter into an agreement with Engineering Associates Incorporated for professional engineering services in connection with the design of the Johnson Road waterline extension and declaring an emergency.
We need to get this done so that we can go and start get the designing done so that we can go ahead and apply for our OPWC grants and all this good stuff for next year. And even though we'll be looking for this for not to exceed 62,000, and I don't think it's going to even get started until 2021 anyway. So at this time, I motion to waive the third reading on ordinance 128, 2019.
I'll second.
There's a motion and a second for waiver of the third reading. Is there any discussion regarding waiver? Would the clerk call the roll, please?
Ms. Whipke?
Yes.
Mr. Pelot?
Yes.
Mr. Gaynor?
Yes.
Mr. McClone?
Yes.
Mr. Carrot?
Yes.
Mr. Towsley?
Yes.
Mr. Kernan?
Yes.
This time, I motion to adopt ordinance 128, 2019.
I'll second.
There's a motion and a second for adoption. Is there any further discussion? Would the clerk call the roll, please?
Ms. Whipke?
Yes.
Mr. Pelot?
Yes.
Mr. Gaynor?
Yes.
Mr. McClone?
Yes.
Mr. Carratt?
Yes.
Mr. Towesley?
Yes.
Mr. Kernan?
Yes. Ordinance number 129, 2019, Ms. Whipke.
Mr. President, this time I offer ordinance 129, 2019 for its second reading. Ask clerk to read it, please.
An ordinance to authorize the administrative officer to enter into an agreement with Engineering Associates Incorporated for professional engineering services in connection with the design of the Reimer Road and Carl Street water line extension and declaring an emergency.
It's another thing that we need to get done so they can get started, and I believe this is what we'd kind of covered for the assessments and stuff earlier. My motion to waive the third reading on ordinance 129, 2019.
I'll second.
Motion and second for waiver. Is there any discussion? Clerk, call the roll, please.
Ms. Whipke?
Yes.
Mr. Pelot?
Yes.
Mr. Gaynor?
Yes.
Mr. McClone?
Yes.
Mr. Carratt?
Yes.
Mr. Towesley?
Yes.
Mr. Kernan?
Yes.
Yes.
Move to adopt.
Oh, I'm sorry. I motion to adopt ordinance 129, 2019.
I'll second.
There's a motion and second for adoption. Is there any further discussion? Will the clerk call the roll, please?
Ms. Whipke?
Yes.
Mr. Pelot?
Yes.
Mr. Gaynor?
Yes.
Mr. McClone?
Yes.
Mr. Carratt?
Yes.
Mr. Towesley?
Yes.
Mr. Kernan?
Yes. Ordinance number 130, 2019, Ms. Whipke.
Thank you, Mr. President. I offer ordinance 130, 2019 for its second reading. Ask clerk to read it, please.
An ordinance authorizing the purchase of a reversible snowplow RSP 10X42, trip edge plow, and TGS salt/sand spreader for the Service Department at a cost not to exceed $13,200.
Again, this is so that we can get this and make sure that we have it ready for this winter as we progress. This time, I motion to waive the third reading on ordinance 130, 2019.
I'll second.
Motion and second for waiver. Is there any discussion regarding waiver? Will the clerk call the roll, please?
Ms. Whipke?
Yes.
Mr. Pelot?
Yes.
Mr. Gaynor?
Yes.
Mr. McClone?
Yes.
Mr. Carratt?
Yes.
Mr. Towesley?
Yes.
Mr. Kernan?
Yes.
This time, I motion to adopt ordinance 130, 2019.
I'll second.
There's a motion and a second for adoption of ordinance number 130, 2019. Is there any further discussion? Will the clerk call the roll, please?
Ms. Whipke?
Yes.
Mr. Pelot?
Yes.
Mr. Gaynor?
Yes.
Mr. McClone?
Yes.
Mr. Carratt?
Yes.
Mr. Towesley?
Yes.
Mr. Kernan?
Yes. Ordinance number 131, 2019, Ms. Whipke.
Thank you, Mr. President. I offer ordinance 131, 2019 for its second reading. Ask clerk to read it, please.
An ordinance authorizing the execution and delivery of an agreement with Sunwald Corporation for the installation of equipment for a 2020 Freightliner M2106 truck and declaring an emergency.
This is also tied to ordinance 130 in order to be able to take care of our little roads once again. This time I motion to waive the third reading on ordinance 131, 2019.
I'll second.
There's a motion and a second to waive the third reading of ordinance number 131, 2019. Any discussion regarding waiver? Clerk, call the roll, please.
Ms. Whipke?
Yes.
Mr. Pelot?
Yes.
Mr. Gaynor?
Yes.
Mr. McClone?
Yes.
Mr. Carratt?
Yes.
Mr. Towesley?
Yes.
Mr. Kernan?
Yes.
This time I motion to adopt ordinance 131, 2019.
I'll second.
Motion and a second for adoption of ordinance number 131, 2019. Any further discussion? Will the clerk call the roll, please?
Ms. Whipke?
Yes.
Mr. Pelot?
Yes.
Mr. Gaynor?
Yes.
Mr. McClone?
Yes.
Mr. Carratt?
Yes.
Mr. Towesley?
Yes.
Mr. Kernan?
Yes. Ordinance number 133, 2019, Mr. McGlone.
Thank you, Mr. President. I offer ordinance 133, 2019 for its second reading and ask clerk to read it, please.
An ordinance to amend section 242.02 of the codified ordinances of the city of Norton, Ohio, and declaring an emergency.
Yes, this is, we're adding another section for the duties of the fire chief. We're adding the salary of the fire chief shall be 5% higher than the annual maximum base salary of the next highest paid full-time city fire department employee. Being this is going to be in the 2020 salary rate, I'd like to waive the third reading tonight.
I'll second.
There's a motion and a second to waive the third reading of ordinance number 133, 2019. Any discussion regarding waiver? Will the clerk call the roll, please?
Mr. McClone?
Yes.
Ms. Whipke?
Yes.
Mr. Gaynor?
Yes.
Mr. Carratt?
Yes.
Mr. Towesley?
Yes.
Mr. Pelot?
Yes.
Mr. Kernan?
Yes.
I move to adopt 133, 2019.
I'll second.
We have a motion and a second to adopt ordinance number 133, 2019. Any further discussion regarding adoption? I just wanted to also point out, I think that we're just basically doing the same thing with the fire chief that we did with the police chief. I think it was last year or the year before, so.
Right. Yeah.
Clerk, call the roll, please.
Mr. McClone?
Yes.
Ms. Whipke?
Yes.
Mr. Gaynor?
Yes.
Mr. Carratt?
Yes.
Mr. Towsley?
Yes.
Mr. Pelot?
Yes.
Mr. Kernan?
Yes. Ordinance number 134, 2019, Mr. McGlone.
Thank you, Mr. President. I offer ordinance 134, 2019 for its second reading. Ask clerk to read it, please.
An ordinance determining to amend the certain non-bargaining unit salary rates and wages and declaring an emergency.
And yes, being this is the last meeting of the year, and these are the 2020 salary rates for the administrative officer, service department manager, director of finance, and city solicitor. I'd like to waive the third reading tonight.
I'll second.
There's a motion and a second to waive the third reading of ordinance number 134, 2019. Any further discussion regarding waiver? Would the clerk call the roll, please?
Mr. McClone?
Yes.
Ms. Whipke?
Yes.
Mr. Gaynor?
Yes.
Mr. Carratt?
Yes.
Mr. Towsley?
Yes.
Mr. Pelot?
Yes.
Mr. Kernan?
Yes.
I'd like to adopt 134, 2019.
I'll second.
Motion and a second to adopt ordinance number 134, 2019. Is there any further discussion? Would the clerk call the roll, please?
Mr. McClone?
Yes.
Ms. Whipke?
Yes.
Mr. Gaynor?
Yes.
Mr. Carratt?
Yes.
Mr. Towsley?
Yes.
Mr. Pelot?
Yes.
Mr. Kernan?
Yes. Ordinance number 127, 2019, Ms. Whipke.
Thank you, Mr. President. I offer ordinance 127, 2019 for its third reading and ask clerk to read it, please.
An ordinance authorizing the purchase of a KM 8000 TED Hotbox trailer for the service department at a cost not to exceed $29,195.
For the public's information, as a refresher, this is for be able to use hot asphalt out for repairing the roads. This time, I motion to adopt ordinance 127, 2019.
I'll second.
There's a motion and a second to adopt ordinance number 127, 2019. Is there any further discussion? Would the clerk call the roll, please?
Ms. Whipke?
Yes.
Mr. Pelot?
Yes.
Mr. Gaynor?
Yes.
Mr. McClone?
Yes.
Mr. Carratt?
Yes.
Mr. Towsley?
Yes.
Mr. Kernan?
Yes. Public service announcements. Mayor Zita?
Well, with this being the last meeting of the year, I would just like to, first of all, encourage everyone to take a drive down through the park and enjoy some of the Christmas lights. And I just also want to wish everybody a Merry Christmas and a happy and safe holiday.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Right. New business. I move to enter into executive session to conference with an attorney for the city concerning disputes involving the city that are the subject of pending or imminent court action as defined in Ohio Revised Code Section 121.22 G3 and Section 3.123 of the Norton City Charter.
I'll second.
I have a motion and a second to go into executive session. Would the clerk call the roll, please?
Mr. Kernan?
Yes.
Mr. Pelot?
Yes.
Mr. Gaynor?
Yes.
Mr. McClone?
Yes.
Mr. Carratt?
Yes.
Mr. Towsley?
Yes.
Ms. Whipke?
Yes.
At this time, I would like to invite Mayor Zita, Mr. Fowler, Mr. Messner, and Mr. Markey to attend. There will be no legislative action taken tonight as a result of this executive session discussion. We will return to the regular council meeting in order to adjourn after the executive session. Just a note to everybody, while we're in executive session, the audio and video is recording live and uninterrupted. If you do not want your conversations recorded, please exit the council chambers.
It's all good.
Yeah, just went through my head.
Publix next year, 2020.
Are they still in business?
Yeah, 2020.
I love their fish sandwiches.
There used to be one right down the...
Yeah, I know. I'm just glad I just didn't escape.
That's what I say.
I don't know any McDonald's songs.
See old duck boy?
Huh?
See old duck boy?
Yeah.
He's keeping them rolling right now, man.
I know, I know.
I don't know if you got my email, but either time is good for me, so you just tell me when to be there and I'll come.
Alice, in his case, probably can only do I think I'm singing, so I'll probably still stay with that, but I'd really love to do the two. I used to do that. And I take the Carolyn group out on the road for hours. And I've got the time period off. I'm on holiday.
Yeah, my last day of work for 2 weeks of vacation is Friday, so, you know, I'm good.
I'm waiting to hear some other responses and see and I'll keep you in the loop. As soon as I know, as soon as I make a decision. Thanks, Bob. I appreciate it.
I think they're nice. You might want to steal a couple. Good night. Where's everybody else?
Everybody else kind of went the other way.
Oh, do you want to sign for the,
What?
it's not very Christmassy, but that's all I had. I forgot about him. Didn't get this started until 7:30.
Knock, knock. That's you. I hadn't seen that until I asked questions.
All right. We will.
Oh, yeah, I'm seeing it. But
Just pass that down.
Go for it. Call the regular meeting back to order. Is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
All in favor, say aye. Aye. We're adjourned.
what I was concerned about was what Charlotte said too.
Okay.